chasing a feeling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Tara Martini, along with Becky McNattin. I'm so glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health together.
And today we are joined by a special guest, Brenda Naven,
Yes.
who is the founder and CEO of Launch My Health. Brenda started this business in 2020, and since that time has sought to address gaps in healthcare by seeking to share, educate, integrate how food is medicine. And I want our listeners really to hear that phrase because we're going to talk about it a lot today. Food is medicine. Thrilled to have Brenda on the show today to talk through the topic of food and specifically our mood. So welcome, Brenda.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Great to have you here. And as we get started today, tell our listeners a little bit about you.
So I am, again, like you mentioned, I'm CEO founder of Launch My Health. I'm a registered dietitian, and I worked in healthcare for 20 plus years. And for me, nutrition has been such an integral part of my life. I grew up around food. My mom was co-oping before co-oping was cool. And I just always loved nutrition. And I got out of college, I'm like, I want to be a clinical dietitian. And as soon as I donned that white coat and got into healthcare, I was like, what did I do with my career? This is not what I thought it was. It was this revolving door of sick care.
Okay.
Yeah, the illness model.
This illness model. And I felt like all I was doing was checking a box. And I really wasn't helping people using nutrition to improve their health. Now, of course, over the course of 22 years, I've learned so much more. Nutrition has evolved and changed. When I went to college, low fat was like what we were supposed to be teaching too. So things have evolved. But ultimately, what led me to start Launch My Health was I just couldn't be in healthcare anymore, pushing that boulder up a hill and trying to bring nutrition to a place where it was like a part of healthcare, like integrated in. Not one of those things that you just refer to when somebody has diabetes, but really integrated into the care model.
Yeah.
And so instead of complaining about it, because I was all the time.
Sure.
Well, and that's just the way that it is, right? For a long time when people hit that point.
Yes.
Where it is you complain, but then you hit a point where you're like, you know what? I can complain forever or I can do something about it.
Right. And so I really had to take a step back. I'm really reflective. I journal every day, and it just kept bubbling up for me like I am meant to do something more. I have a bigger purpose in life. And that purpose to me is to bring food as medicine to the masses. So I quit my job.
Wow.
That is a leap of faith right there.
And I was newly single.
Huh.
So I had just gotten a divorce. My mom was dying at the time. And I thought, why not just do one more thing?
Why
And
not?
It probably
why
was
not?
a little distraction too from all that was going on. And I could focus on something really positive. And so I started my company, Launch My Health. And I really wanted to make nutrition scalable for people, accessible. And accessible meaning like if you live in a rural area or somebody who's nervous to even maybe talk about nutrition, like you could do this in the privacy of your own home and affordable. So those were kind of my 3 goals, and we've achieved that. We're celebrating our 5-year anniversary now. So I'm really excited to be a woman-owned business and really fulfill my purpose of bringing food as medicine to the masses.
Yeah, and even, although it's 3 simple words, food is medicine, it is a framework change for our society. And you took on accessibility, major hurdles here. Super proud of you. We also love women-owned businesses on this show, and I'm glad that we can highlight what you're doing and the change you're making. Food is medicine. Well, this is what we're going to be talking about today, food and our mood specifically. Such an interesting topic. Right now, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we talk through promoting mental well-being through what we eat, everyone. Thank you for listening to Feels Out Loud. We are going to be back in just a moment.
Need help from nobody else. All you got to do now. Nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, you don't know who to trust. All you see is danger, trying to find what you lost.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Tara Martini with the fabulous Becky McNattin, along with special guest Brenda Naven. Let's dive right back into our discussion on food and our mood.
Brenda, we have a ton of questions for you today, just so
Great.
you know.
I'm ready.
And
ready.
You shared with me when we were talking quite a while ago that our brain uses 20% of daily calorie intake as energy, our brain, which is incredible to me to think about, and means that what we are consuming is going to have a direct and huge impact on our brain. And I don't think we really consider how huge that is. That what we are consuming is going to have this direct impact on our brain. So I'm glad that we can have a conversation about it. And you also told me something that I thought was really interesting. And I wanted to ask you this first. You said nutrition has had the biggest impact on our health in modern history. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think, we were not evolved to be consuming the food that we're consuming today. We have a lot of ultra-processed food. Think about all the changes that have happened in our food system, and our biology, our cells, cannot keep up with that change. They haven't evolved to the way that we eat today. And the majority of people, over 50% of their diet is ultra-processed food. So I'm not talking about like cornmeal as a processed food. I'm talking about like packaged foods like Doritos and cookies and chips and that type of thing. And our body doesn't recognize that. Our cells don't recognize that type of food like it does whole, fresh foods.
Well, we have to think about why that is and why it's banned in other countries.
Right. And I think there's a lot more recognition now. And
Yes.
we're having a lot more
We're
conversation.
getting better.
We're
Yes,
having a lot more
we are.
conversation about whole, fresh foods. And I've been saying this, my entire career, like eat real food. I want to have a T-shirt that just says eat real
Yes.
food. And I do think for people, it's a continuum, though. If you are mainly eating ultra-processed or processed food, you're not going to go to eating all these whole, fresh foods right away. And you need to learn how to cook, too.
Sure.
I mean, and there's also budget that comes into that, too. There's a lot of things that come into play. But over 60%, or six out of 10 people have one chronic disease in the U.S., and a lot of those are dietary related. So our nutrition impacts that. And over 15 types of cancers have been identified to be nutrition related as well.
So no wonder you say it's had
A profound
impact
Yes.
on modern history, nutrition.
Yes.
And we're going to explore all sorts of facets to mental health and nutrition today. And I was thinking about this show. I have really been processing and pondering the idea that we talk so little about nutrition in the mental health world. Tell me your views on this, Brenda.
So, of course, I have a lot of views on this. And I think, mental health traditionally, it's been like this neurochemistry. I mean, you guys are the experts in this, but that's really traditionally the way that it's thought of. And we think of like it as a siloed issue. It's mental health. Just like we think of like you have a cardiovascular problem, you have a renal problem or a kidney problem. Well, just like a cardiovascular problem or a renal problem, our mental health is not siloed. And it impacts our entire body. And is it chicken or the egg? But everything is working together, and it can, just like nutrition for mental health, what we eat can either help or harm. And in my business, I'm selling a lot to employers as a benefit. And a lot of times what they'll tell me is like, well, we're really focused on mental health. And if your mental health strategy doesn't include a component of nutrition, you're missing a huge part of the puzzle, right?
Well, then it's how invested are you in the mental health area or realm for your staff if you're not invested in the nutrition part?
Yeah, and part of the fascinating component of this to me is clinicians, I am one, are not trained in nutrition. I've been in a lot of years of school, and I have never had a class on the subject. And it sometimes anecdotally would come up in discussion about things, but I doubt it comes up regularly in discussion about mental health symptoms. It's not part of assessments. And so very likely it's clients and providers that are not aware of nutrition and the mental health connection.
Right. And we have a CME that we do for providers on this. And I've done this with the University of Michigan. I've done it locally here at M Health Fairview at Alina Health and trained providers on this. And their eyes are opened. And if I can help one mental health provider, just like you said, like maybe they ask some screening questions. And I think the person with the mental health issues, and they're in a therapy session, they're seeing a provider, would welcome the conversation about this and to know, like, wouldn't it be really wonderful to know that, gosh, maybe my symptoms could improve just by improving what I eat?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
And not that it may solve everything, but if you had maybe with therapy and let's say medication, you had a 40% improvement, would you take 10% more?
Right.
Well
by
said.
improving what you eat?
Yes.
Yes, we all would.
Even just listeners right now sitting there going, wait a second, like I've really never thought about that when I want to work on my mental wellness. I've really never thought about nutrition's part of this.
Yep.
Making them think about that for the first time. What a gift you've just given them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tell us about, why is the gut called the second brain?
Yeah, so we think of like mental health, we think of the brain.
Yes.
And then what we don't think about is the gut. And the gut and the brain are connected. So we call the gut the second brain. And there's an enteric nervous system in the brain. So if you think of that as like the operations center. So I'll use an example of Amazon. So we have Jeff Bezos is the CEO, right?
Yeah.
Well, Jeff Bezos is the brain. Okay, he's running the operation. He's the CEO. Well, there's a lot of people who have to, make sure that you get your packages.
Sure,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of logistics that need to happen and communication back and forth with Jeff Bezos, right? And so that's your enteric nervous system.
Got
And
it.
so there's a superhighway that's going in between your gut and your brain. And that's, I think, the best example that I can give is like a CEO and then like the operations center.
It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
it makes me think about, so for anyone out there, mental wellness is also your gut. We think about mental wellness and emotional processing in the show. We're literally called Feels Out Loud. But that you are going to have emotion processing in your gut.
Right. So
If it is our second brain.
Totally. And if you like an example of this, and I'm sure you guys could share all kinds, but I think of like, okay, you're going to be on a podcast. Are you nervous for that? Maybe you have some digestive issues in the morning,
Yes.
right? And everybody can relate to that example
Right.
of when your stomach feels a little, and that's like an acute stress issue.
Right.
Now, when you think of like a chronic stress issue, like maybe say you're going through a divorce or you got diagnosed with a really serious illness or a family member does, you might start having some digestive issues or other things that start happening because of that. And that's that highway, the connection and that communication that's happening.
Well, and we see so many things or diagnoses manifest themselves physically, right? How many times do we correlate anxiety with gut issues?
Right.
A lot of the times there's that conversation that we have.
Yeah, and I think then it comes down to like people want to know, well, what is it? What can I do to help? Like, what do I eat? How do I change what I'm eating to help?
Yeah, and in the mental health world, we hear lots about dopamine, serotonin. I would say Tara and I focus huge parts of our day around those concepts.
Yes.
How are those impacted by the gut?
So your neurotransmitters, about 90%, well, we know 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. And
That is a very large percentage.
That's a large.
Well, it is.
90%.
Right, it is. And it's made from an amino acid called tryptophan.
Okay.
And probably your listeners have heard of tryptophan. We think of it as, it's high in turkey.
Yes.
So we think of that Thanksgiving dinner and we're feeling full and sleepy. But tryptophan is not made in the body, so you do need to consume it. It's also in things like salmon and eggs and dairy products, so you can get tryptophan in many different foods, other meats. But that's required to make serotonin.
Okay.
The other thing that people probably don't know is that serotonin just doesn't hop on that superhighway and cross into the blood-brain barrier and get into the brain and increase serotonin. That's not the way it works. It actually works on the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is what is important in the serotonin in the gut.
So for our listeners, really your gut is connected to your mood. And we could say maybe your gut, if such a huge percentage of serotonin is created in our gut, your gut is fundamental to your mood.
Absolutely. And also too, this ties into your gut bacteria that you have. I mean, we hear a lot about gut health today, and gut health impacts, like you mentioned, Tara, earlier, just about all the other kind of chronic diseases. Well, gut health is so important in the creation of neurotransmitters too. So the actual bacteria that you have in your gut.
Wow.
So if you have gut dysbiosis, which means an imbalance in your good bacteria and your bad bacteria, you could have less production of neurotransmitters too. So this is why, I mean, your gut health matters, inflammation matters.
Yeah. So when you say gut health, are you referring to like microbiome? Okay.
Right.
So tell us more about that.
So your microbiome, I think that's, been a heavy buzzword over the past few years.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
we
has.
I see it on like social media and
Yes,
stuff,
we
which is
do.
kind of why I ask.
Yeah. So we have multiple microbiomes in our body. The gut is the most well-known one.
Okay.
But we also have an oral microbiome. And there's tons of research coming out on the oral microbiome. We also have a microbiome on our skin.
Wow.
But again, like the gut is probably the most powerful that we know of right now. And there's bacteria in there, there's fungi, there's viruses, and there's a mix of all these things. Well, there's good and there's bad. And again, we want to have this kind of homeostasis that's happening in there, a balance of the good and the bad bacteria. And when we have the bad become more plentiful in there, that's when we can really start having issues. We can have leaky gut. Maybe those neurotransmitters aren't getting created. We can actually have toxins that can go and cross into the blood-brain barrier. So it's an important part of your gut health and your overall health and certainly your mental health.
And maintaining it then, or sustaining
Yes, yes.
it. Can you talk a little bit about how stress then impacts our gut health?
So it will significantly impact the bad bacteria. So you're probably going to have more or overgrowth of bad bacteria in the microbiome from the stress hormones.
Because we see that, I would say, when people are coming in on the clinical side to process, that is probably the impact on the body that we hear the most. Is
I would agree.
I am stressed, maybe not necessarily knowing that the stress itself is impacting or causing the impact to the gut, but that those go back and forth often.
Yeah, so now as you're seeing people, you can have that conversation and just asking some questions about their nutrition and what they're eating and kind of get a gauge of where people are at with what they're consuming. And certainly there's some really simple strategies people can implement just to start to improve their diet and see if there's a change in their mental health. See if it helps.
And sometimes, yes, when we're feeling a certain way, we're driven to want certain foods too. So that may or may not help the issue.
Right. Well, and our body craves those things for a reason, right? The sugar and things like that when there's an imbalance.
Right. And neurotransmitters
Yes.
impact your hunger and fullness. So think about that. If your microbiome is out of balance, you're not producing the right amount of neurotransmitters, everything is going to get out of balance.
Right. Makes total sense.
And then when you think about, too, people who are on SSRIs or medications, think about how their hunger and fullness get kind of skewed as well, right? That's why people can have weight gain or weight loss depending on the medication that they're on.
That makes so much sense. Well, my brain is kind of doing, it's spinning, everybody.
But we love when that happens.
It's a good spinning. It's a good spinning, yes.
We love when we get to take on the role as student and that we're learning, or we'll often say on the show, like, our minds are blown.
Yes.
And I'm just loving, because I'm having these images in my mind of people who are listening on the radio in their cars and just going, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought of this. And all the things that they're connecting right now in their lives regarding nutrition, mental health, their gut, all these things that you're just opening all these possibilities for them to explore for ways for them to improve their wellness.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Brenda, what we eat influences our mood. So I want to rapid fire you with some different things that probably influence our mood. So tell us about low fiber.
Oh, well, you're going to be hearing a lot about fiber. I think it is trending like the next probably 5 years. You are going to be hearing so much about fiber. I preach fiber, 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 fiber. We need about 30 to 38 grams of fiber a day. The average American consumes less than 15 grams.
So you're saying no low fiber.
No low
You're
fiber.
saying get rid of that.
For the general
The
population.
low fiber is going to impact our mood.
Totally.
Yep.
And the reason why is a lot of fibrous foods, well, there's multiple functions for fiber, but specifically in relation to your mental health, is it's going to impact your gut bacteria. A lot of fibrous foods like leeks, onions, garlic, they're considered to be a prebiotic. And a prebiotic is actually, and especially when you're initially changing your diet, more important than the probiotic.
Okay.
It is the food that the probiotics eat, the bacteria eat. So imagine if you're like, okay, gung-ho, I'm going to fix my gut. I'm going to start taking a probiotic supplement, which I would not encourage people to do. You're going to get all this probiotic into your gut, all the good bacteria, and what are they going to eat?
Oh. Okay, Tara and I are speechless. That makes so much sense, though.
Right.
So truly having a high fiber diet is going to provide the opportunity for then future sustainability in your gut.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to ask us to rewind a little bit for our listeners.
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between probiotic and prebiotic?
Oftentimes very confusing for people. A prebiotic is the food that a probiotic, the bacteria, are going to consume.
Okay.
And a prebiotic are certain types of fibers like apples, asparagus, onions, leeks. I mean, you can certainly Google it and find a whole list of good prebiotic foods. If you have difficulty consuming those, you can always get a prebiotic supplement as well. You know, you can talk to your provider about that, a registered dietitian, a pharmacist. And I always recommend, if you're that person who's getting 5, 10, 15 grams of fiber a day, start slow. Don't say, gung-ho, I'm going to start having flaxseed in a smoothie. I'm going to start having all these vegetables, and you're going to be miserable. You're going to be gassy, bloated. So start slow, add in, like 3 grams every 3 days, and get yourself up to that goal. But fiber is so important for many other functions in your body, but especially for your gut health.
Okay. So for us, the takeaway there is probiotics consume prebiotics.
Yes.
And so we need both of them, but we need the prebiotics really first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell us about how sugar impacts mood.
So sugar is, of course, everybody's probably had or seen children. Like you can get hyperactivity. That's kind of what we think of with sugar, right? And then you get
Sugar rush.
Yeah, the sugar rush, the up and the down with sugar. We're learning more and more about sugar and blood sugar control. We want to have a stable blood sugar, and that's for our mood too, because that sugar goes into the brain. Remember, you kind of opened this whole segment with about our brain consuming 20% of our calories, right? So what type of fuel do we want for our brain?
Not sugar.
Not sugar.
Oh no.
What about
Because we want stability. We want stability, and we don't
Right.
want the up and the down.
the rapid cycling?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about phytonutrients?
So phytonutrients, that may be a new term for your audience.
I bet it is. Yeah.
Right.
Or for the co-host.
Yes. And they're basically chemicals that are found in plants.
Oh, yes, that's why it'd be
Yep. And what I recommend for people to do is to not get into all the details of it, but to think about eating the rainbow. So phytonutrients, think about all the colorful foods that we have, the whole fresh foods, and just start picking things from the rainbow. Like think of all the colors and have, try to check that off throughout the week that you're getting all the different colors, because all the different phytonutrients that are in these plants do different things in our body.
Okay.
And what they really do is they help reduce inflammation. And that's the other key component that we haven't really talked about much is we've got gut health is a huge part of your mental health. And then we have inflammation. And so that's why phytonutrients are really important for your mental health. And again, this is like systemic. If you're consuming phytonutrients, you're not only reducing like brain inflammation, you're reducing whole body inflammation.
Wow.
So, we can leap to that. The inflammation piece, you mentioned inflammation is huge in terms of its impact on mental health. Say more about it.
Well, if you have, what we know is that people who have depression in research tend to have higher inflammatory markers. So some of those labs that you might see from your doctor might be like a CRP or a high sensitivity CRP. That's an inflammatory marker in your body. And what we don't want is chronic inflammation. When we have chronic inflammation, that also means likely our brain is inflamed too. And so,
Makes sense.
So that's, again, it's like gut health and inflammation. And again, what do you think causes inflammation in the body too? The bacteria in the gut. So again, it goes back to the gut. So I think if there's two things that people really need to focus on, and this is what we do at Launch My Health too, is we have courses on reducing inflammation in your body and restoring your gut health.
So
those are two foundational principles for your health.
Okay. And it sounds like phytonutrients help with reducing inflammation.
Yes.
Both of those, Are
there other things that do too?
Well, there's certainly dietary things, and then there's other things, like physical activity that can, it can cause inflammation or it can help reduce inflammation. So it depends. I mean, we get into the details on that. I'm not an expert, but also your sleep impacts inflammation. So those are and toxins, whether it's in your food, whether it's in the air, maybe it's, in your water. So there's relationships.
Okay.
So relationships are a toxin too.
Wow.
Can we go to sleep for a second?
Yes.
So things like magnesium.
Yes. Magnesium is like the ultimate kind of relaxation mineral. And there's, many different forms of magnesium that you can take. And we probably don't have enough time to talk about that today, but magnesium is, a lot of people are deficient in it. You can certainly increase the foods that are rich in magnesium, like nuts are really rich in magnesium. But also taking a supplement can help you sleep, in particular magnesium glycinate.
Okay.
So that would be the one that I recommend before bed. And usually people take 100 to 300 milligrams before bed, but you can see a significant improvement and it's just relaxing.
But you can also do it not just through a supplement, but actually your food.
Yeah,
So
and I'm an advocate of like food first.
Right,
Food first.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's push it the natural way. Yep.
Yeah. But sometimes people need to take a supplement. They just can't change their diet that much for whatever reason, and they need to take a supplement.
So in terms of vitamins, B vitamins, vitamin D, zinc.
All the things.
Tell us how those impact mood.
So a lot of those are involved in neurotransmitter creation again.
Of course they are.
Yes.
Yes.
Everything is.
Everything is.
Right? It seems like everything is. But without having adequate intake of those, this is why the whole fresh foods, like if you're eating ultra-processed food and have a poor diet, you're not going to be making efficiently enough neurotransmitters and also impacting your gut bacteria. So getting B vitamins, zinc are going to be really important. Vitamin D, which in this area of the country probably... I'm just saying this anecdotally, but most people are probably deficient. We're certainly not getting it from the sun.
Yeah.
And we really, there's deficiency level, And then there's the optimal level. And a lot of times your physician isn't going to talk about the optimal level. It's just going to be like, well, you're not deficient, so you don't need any. But, I generally recommend people take 2,000 IUs a day.
And what might people notice if they didn't have enough in terms of impact to their mood?
Usually depression symptoms.
Okay.
And that could be, I think that's an important thing for a mental health provider to be thinking about when you're seeing anybody, is thinking about micronutrient deficiencies and screening for vitamin D. Because that alone, just getting your vitamin D level back to optimal, could have a significant impact. And it's going to depend on the person, because maybe it's impacting them, maybe it's not, but it could. Mm-hmm. And vitamin D actually functions like a hormone. And it's very important. If you go back, I won't get into it here, but if you go back to the history of vitamin D, it was actually a hormone when it was discovered. And then they changed the name to a vitamin.
Wow.
So, but it's powerful. It's very powerful.
And
So many questions.
I'm hearing you talk about all of this, and it's making me think about these really are actionable items too, because sometimes in the scope of mental health care, there are things that are much more long-term around what we need to process, developing emotional awareness or self-awareness, even regulation. These are things people could pace change for sure, but take immediate action around doing something even slightly different.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the power of nutrition, is you can start making one nutrition change and you can start feeling different that day. Because think about if you just didn't have soda, like that was your goal, and you didn't have soda and your blood sugar was more stable, and then your mood was more stable and you slept better.
Yep.
That's just one change. I would recommend, and what I've seen now, this is my experience of being a dietitian over, my entire adulthood, is that the most success that I see in people is if they do, as you suggested, pace the change.
Yes.
One step at a time, because people tend to kind of wave the white flag if they're not successful, and just create a habit. And when you feel good about that habit, then move on and add on to it. Add something else when you feel successful. And just do it one step at a time.
And I think that's so important. It's something when working with clients too. It's whatever you're working on when you have a goal. It's not just go 0 to 100, right? It's small changes, gradual changes. And the same is true with what you just said. And I think it's so important. You're more likely to achieve that end goal then.
Right.
You mentioned to me an interesting term, nutritional psychiatry. And this was new to me. Can you say more about nutritional psychiatry?
Yeah, so it's an emerging field.
Okay.
And I think, really it's about like looking at gut health. It's looking at inflammation. So it's not just mental health is happening in isolation, just the brain. It's really expanding it to the body system, and how does nutrition impact that? So we're seeing more and more research coming out on nutrition and mental health, and it's an emerging field. So people are getting more educated on it and having specialties in nutritional psychiatry.
Are there providers people could reach out to?
That I don't have any. I
If
would
it's an
require
emergency,
some
so new.
research.
challenging.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
just that's so exciting to be saying that something like that is emerging.
Yeah, well, there are certainly psychiatrists who have talked for a long time about diet or vitamin deficiencies as an aspect to prescribing. They'll prescribe, you need to take broccoli, everybody, something like that, that is not only an SSRI or an SNRI, that people are considering this more holistic view, but it's been sort of relegated to what we call integrative health or holistic health, which is a little bit considered tangential. So I love that this may even be just a blooming new field of work.
Well, and what I really don't want to see happen, though, is that it becomes a subspecialty and that people like yourselves are not able to use that the nutrition component in your practice as well.
Good point.
It's just like primary care. I think primary care should be integrating nutrition into their visits. I mean, that's what people are expecting. They're expecting to get lifestyle advice and not just a prescription for a medication or a procedure or come back and we'll watch this.
Right.
They want to know, what can I do? They want to be active and engaged in their health, and nutrition is something people can have control over.
It absolutely is. Momentary.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are people who are sitting there listening today who are thinking about, even in their own lives, what are the symptoms that I might be experiencing? And particularly around my mood, what are the fluctuations I have? Are there certain times that I eat a certain thing and that impacts it? You've highlighted things about just being aware of what are we noticing about our body? How do we feel? And that tells us some things around what might I have a reaction to, or what might I need more of? What could I do differently? And you were saying today, and I might feel different today.
Right.
Right.
Which is so cool to have that immediate.
Well, and
impact.
even for you as practitioners, it's an easy tool for a provider to put into action right away too, with a patient that they're seeing or a client that they're seeing, to say, hey, let's see if let's make this one change and have you journal about it and see what type of impact it has.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And how many times I talked to a gentleman once that had pretty severe mental illness. He had schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, taking medication. I mean, it was under control, but he had been, seeing a psychiatrist the majority of his adult life.
Yeah.
And I was asking him, has anybody ever talked to you about nutrition? And he was like, no.
Wow.
And so then that spurred the conversation to go, like, I had no idea that could impact what I have going on.
Well, think about what he'd been missing then.
And he was drinking like 3 energy drinks a day. Like 300, so probably 900 milligrams of caffeine a day. And just think of those, that's another whole
I was just
piece.
going
We
to
haven't
say,
even
that's a
talked
whole
about
episode, energy drinks and caffeine and
Yeah.
But the foundational missed opportunities there, I think, is part of what you're highlighting, that it isn't an or, it's an and. That we can have a structural response while we also have medication response, and how people may be disserving themselves taking medications if they're also not looking at diet, because the medications maybe could be more helpful if they were also promoting food that helped those medications work. For example, if you're taking caffeine and you're taking something that would be sort of a sedative, those are
they're
going
to cancel.
They're going to at least battle with each other inside. And what spaces of opportunity there are, which is kind of your business. So, in a short amount of time, tell us about what your business is.
Yeah, so we, when I started Launch My Health again, I wanted to make this nutrition education and cooking education scalable, accessible, and affordable. So we primarily sell to businesses, and it's an employee benefit, and we teach people what to eat and how to cook. But we do that in a non-labeling kind of way. So we don't have education for diabetes. We don't have education for high cholesterol. What we do is we provide education on what people's goals are. So my goal is to improve my gut health.
Okay.
We have a Restore Gut Health course, and we go through a whole protocol to restore your gut health. We have a Putting Out the Flame, which is how to reduce inflammation in your body. Every single person is going to be a little bit different as to the reason why they want to take that course, what type of inflammation they have going in their body. They might have an autoimmune condition. They might have a mental health disorder. They're all inflammatory.
Got it. Well, in our line of work, we also call that strengths-based. I love that what you're talking about is you're looking at the goal versus what the problem is. That is a wellness model versus an illness model, and I love it.
And people respond to it. People like it.
Love it.
It's empowering for them. They feel like they have control and they have choices.
We'll be back in just a moment, everyone.
Express yourself, nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, find what you lost. You can't go it alone.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you all, our beautiful listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly, or email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. Of course, follow us on social media as well. We really do want to hear from you and what you are wondering about.
Thank you, everyone who has sent in questions and comments about food and their mood. This was a topic that was new to several people, and I appreciated the level of curiosity and enthusiasm about it. We have a listener, Brenda, who said, are there resources that I could look up or read more to learn about this? It's new to me. Where would you suggest starting?
So one of the places, or I should say a book that I love is Dr. Padre, and it's called The Happy Gut.
Okay.
And so that's a great book to get started. And of course, I would say, Launch My Health. We have great resources too, especially on gut and inflammation. But
yeah, and are those anyone could take?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yep.
So people could look up Launch My Health and look up your website, access the courses there, and get some more information.
Yes, send us an email. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, there's the book, listeners. So read about gut health, and your two main components included gut health in the last segment. If you're going to focus on one thing, listener, focus on that. Which actually leads me to what the second question was. If I was going to change one thing to start off, what would you say I should do?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yes,
we know nothing about this person.
Right. We know nothing about this person.
but it's a great question.
What I would say, and this is, in general, how we will counsel clients or patients that we see, is that you really, knowing the information that you know now, what is appealing to you or what is resonating with you, and pick one thing. So it's not about me telling a particular person, you need to do this, because that person is in charge of their own health. So now, armed with knowledge, what's one thing that you think you could do? And is it sustainable? So 10 years from now, do you think you could still be doing that?
Okay.
Like somebody might say, I'm giving up pop or soda,
Yeah.
Was that really realistic for you? Do you think you could do that? 10 years, so whatever, but finding something that is going to help you achieve that end goal, but just pick one thing.
Well, it gives them a sense of empowerment.
Yeah.
Right? And ownership that they, on their own, after meeting with you, get to select. If you pick it, then chances are they're less likely to achieve the goal because it's not self-directed.
Right. And I don't know all the nuances of their lifestyle and everything else that goes into making those decisions. So best for them to do that.
And a cool challenge, listener. If there's, I would say maybe if there's one thing you should start with, rewind this show and listen to it and think about, as you said, armed with knowledge. I love that. Or purchase the book that we just talked about. Look up your website. From a space of knowledge, then ask yourself in your own life, what is one thing that resonates with me? You. I love what you're highlighting, Brenda's. We are us. You live with your own body every single day. We trust you. We trust you, listener, to tune into what are those messages for you and what is one action item. And then I love that, because we talk about this as therapists often, is it reasonable? And you mentioned sustainable.
Yes.
Is it a thing that you can commit to for a long term? Because it probably won't work if it isn't. And to really think realistically about that and not just wishful thinking wise. Love it. We are already at the end of our show for today. Amazing. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for listening this morning. Join us next week as we process more mental health focused topics. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself. Remember that connection fosters wellness. And your voice is one that the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.
Up and try again. Some